Mic test? Yes. There we go. Okay, let's do it again. I'm a little still recovering from that talk. Thank you for sharing. That was very powerful. My name is Donovan. I run the Wholeness School with my favorite man, everything man, Ryan Donovan, and I started with a passion for training women 20 years ago because of my own wound as a woman. And I vowed to myself I'd never be in business because business was hard. I didn't want hard. And so my passion, training women, I trained women for free for 15 years. I didn't charge a dime. Because to me, business, I wanted nothing to do with what was bad and was hard. And my husband said, January, do you want to reach thousands or millions of women? Well, of course I want to reach millions of women. I believe so much in the work, in training women because I was the untrained woman. And he said, you have to start a business. And then I said, well, how? I have 6 kids. I know nothing about business, 6 kids at that time. And so I began the journey of learning how. And so I want to share with you today is that how do we live a life of contribution through our business? What does it look like for us to live a life where we are profoundly aware that might be the only moment we have? How are we showing up in every single room we walk into? Okay, so I want you to just pause for a moment and look around while somebody gives me a clicker. Ken. Okay, and I want you to just pause and I do want you to just look around. And I want you to imagine if in this room, somebody said, I want to gather all of my favorite people in one room. Just think about all your favorite people, your mentors, who they are. And then I want you to ask yourself, if your favorite people were going to describe you in 3 words, how would they describe you? 3 words. Clicker again. I want you to, if you have a pen, I want you to write it down. I'm waiting for Ken to get the clicker. Okay. So, oh, great. Okay. So, and then if you raise your hand, if you are intentionally designing yourself, look at those 3 words and raise your hand and ask yourself, this is the man or woman I'm actually designing right now. Can you raise your hand if you are? I met my mentor, Elena, when I was in college, and probably the worst time of my life. I was broken, I didn't know myself, I didn't understand my value. And the only thing I could describe myself is that I was pretty disgusted with who I was. And I met her my freshman year in college, and she said, January, what kind of a woman do you want to be? And I remember kind of have this nervous laugh and say, well, I don't have a choice. And he said, let's design you. And for 3.5 years, I met with her almost every single month. She gave me homework. I had to hand it to her. It was back-to-back piece of paper. My first homework was to make my bed before I went to the bathroom so I could feel accomplished. Second was to get up at 4:30 in the morning to pray and plan. And third was to get rid of comparison and competition. And so every single month I would train with her. What I didn't realize was she trained me on mindset and skill set that changed my life forever. Amen. And so the work that began with Elena, she said, January, why do you want to design yourself? What is the purpose of you designing yourself? To be full of yourself? If you want to live a fulfilled life, the purpose of becoming who you're choosing to be, the best version of who you are, is one reason. Is so that you can give more of yourself. We ought to live a life of contribution. Why? Scientifically, it's what fulfills us. Tony Robbins says the secret of living is giving. What do we live in? We live in a world where it's me, me, me. Look at me. Enough about me. What do you think about me? Look at my car, look at my watch, no. It's noisy. And we're all tired of it. You know why? Because we have come to a point in a world where we don't even know what our value is. We're talking to somebody and they're on their phone. You feel it when you're not important. Do you ever talk to somebody and they're not really there? Yes. You feel it. Your contribution is how you make people feel. It doesn't matter if you've made 100 million. I was looking at this guy's last night, and I turned to my husband and I said, Ryan, the profound humility. And then I go back and I give Gary Breck a hug. How he looked at me and the kindness, that's what actually leaves an impression. Not the car you drive, but what happens? We don't know our value. So what leaders do is that they give people evidence of their value. Nothing changes your value. Nothing. It's divinely given. There's nothing they can do to change it. Not even you, not even your opinion of you. The problem is that we live in a world that tells our value is based on what? How much money you make, what car you drive, how perfect your body is, who follows you on Instagram, right? And so what happens is that we are neurologically conditioned, right? What Dr. Rob was talking about, our neurons are conditioned to believe that what makes us valuable is what? Who follows us, the airplane. You're not even thinking about it. And here's what I tell my children. I have 8 children, and I'm disciplined. We have mindset and skill set training. I'm not trying to impress you. I'm trying to tell you that it's a tough world out there to raise children. If you're not training them with mindset and skill set, you're out for a really difficult ride. Okay, the world is attacking us. So, an undisciplined life is a hard life. Okay? And I tell my children that, what would you do if Tiger Woods, that's my son's, he's a golfer, so is my husband, we're going to come into the house. Would you clean your room the same way as if your janitor was coming to the house? Would you treat them the same? And I think that we're in a very beautiful time, I think, in history where we have so much data of, thank you. This is Elena. This is my mentor. It changed my life forever. I still am in contact with her. And when Elena came to me and she said, January, you work and you're intentional and you show up to do the work, but remember that if you want to design a January that is fulfilled, be so intentional in every room you walk into that you are living a life of generosity. Because that's what's going to make you happy. How you make people feel in those micro conversation matters. Okay? And so what I want to share with you today, if I can work this, they call me the low-tech queen. And yes, 5 ways. Oh my God. Oh, sorry. Yes. It's good for my humility. Okay. 5 ways. This is my contribution to you. 5 ways to make your life an act of contribution. Okay? How can you truly make your life an act of contribution? We walked in thousands of rooms in our lifetime, whether it's a date night, it's the kitchen, it's this room, it's your mastermind. How are you so intentional that you're making your life an act of contribution? It's not what we do. It's who we are that matters. Because people experience who you are. I was profoundly amazed that authenticity actually is bigger than love. I thought, why? Because we actually experience people's genuineness. And when people are insincere, we are repelled by it. I don't care how much money you make. How do we teach sincerity? How do we teach generosity to our children? How do we teach people to be genuine in conversation? We live in a world with iPads and iPhones, and I tell my children, I'm right here, darling, your favorite mom in the whole world. Mom, okay, right? So how do we really, number 1, honor your value. What does it mean to honor our value? What is the metric of people's value today? money, right? Car, fame. If you look at yourself and you think, oh, I want to talk to the person. Let me look at how many Instagram followers they have. All of a sudden, we start to treat people differently because of the car they drive or with the purse that they're carrying. I remember my father. My first earliest memories was in the slums of the Philippines. And my father and my mother they were very poor. They didn't have any resources, but I didn't know any better. And as I could remember the smell of the slums. And my parents eventually built a business where they walked not anymore in the slums, not to the next town over. And then we had a house. And the next thing you know, they came to the United States, built a whole business. And I remember, as a little girl, when we walked out of the slums, my mom said, January, you're gonna go to the best school. And I said, okay, what does it look like to be in the best school? And I was going to school, all these very wealthy people. And I remember thinking for the first time, that's what a living room is? Because in my house, my parents sacrificed, and our living room was built on this printing press. It was like, the business was making papers. And all I could hear all night was, and that was all our living room. But I didn't know any better, right? And here's what my father did. When he built a business, people worked for him, and he came to the United States and he built a successful business in the United States. He would come back to the Philippines year after year, and he would find the people in the slums that worked for him. And he would go back to them. And he didn't say, hey, let me take you out. He would sit with them in the slums of the Philippines. And I remember he said, January, nothing changes your value. That's how we impact people. That we can treat the billionaire, the people in the slum, and we make them feel important. We have this sign in our house that says, MMFI, make me feel important. And because I think that so many of us feel so devalued today because of the metric of what makes us feel valuable. Honor your value, because that's how you honor other people's value. Because if you start to look at people who have nice cars and that's what you think makes them valuable, you're gonna start feeling devalued because you don't have the nice car. Okay? We need genuine people who see us for who we are. We are tired of the fluff. Number 2, choose humility. My husband ran a very successful real estate business many years ago. And one time there was this guy who said, I want to learn from you. And so he invited this guy over. He said, listen, I don't like to be away from my family, so come on over. We'll make you lunch. And this guy who was in business for about 2 months sat there with Ryan. And the whole time, he's giving Ryan advice about business. And here's Ryan has been in it for 10, 12 years, extremely successful. And I'm sitting there and I'm making food and I'm like, that was your opportunity to learn, buddy. And here you were telling somebody, giving somebody advice. And after that, I said, Ryan, can you believe it? Like, how is he there? He had an opportunity to learn from you. And Ryan looked at me and said, January, I learned so much. I can learn from a novice. Humility comes from root word humus, which is rich, dark soil in which all things can grow from. Choose humility. You know why? Because to maximize your potential, we need a humble heart to know that we haven't arrived. Life is not about an arrival. It is about evolving to a higher version of ourselves. But unless you're humble enough to know, you're not going to get there. To sit in the feet of somebody and say, today I'm going to start over and learn. Right? Humility is not thinking small. It's not going behind and say, well, you're up front. It's being able to think big and yet start small. Humility is ownership of your full potential. Why? Because unless you're humble enough, you're not going to reach your full potential. That's why success, they say, can be very dangerous. never be too prideful to learn and humble enough to grow. Because at the end of the day, God's gonna say, did you become who I created you to be? Or were you too prideful to make that phone call, like Anthony said? Okay. Number 3, learn to see with eyes of wholeness. This is what we teach in our school. So I'm gonna put on my teacher's hat, because that's what I do, okay? One day, we live in a small knit community, and one day I was dropping my son off in school, and this kind of parent, this guy, let's just call him Dan, right? We would talk very casually every now and then about money and business. He knows he's in business. And he came up to me and said, January, I hear you speaking with John Maxwell and Ed Milet. I said, yeah, it's a real honor. I can't believe it. I'm so humbled. And he said, what are you talking about? Those guys are a fraud. They make money, they rip people off. I'm like, wait, Dan. Have you read his books? He said, yes, they do pyramid schemes and they rip people off, and you rip people off, and you're a scam, and you're a parasite, and you're an awful human being. I said, no, we have thousands of students all over the world. I can give you thousands of testimonies. I'm like, I've been doing this all my life. He's like, no, you're a scam. He slams his door, he's screaming. I had to call the police. Later on, his wife comes up to me and apologized, and I said, January, he's hurting. His business is hurting, his family is broken, he's got some really deep hurt, and I'm so sorry he took it out on you. Unfulfilled people become toxic to our community. Why? Because they are toxic to themselves. We have a responsibility to fulfill every part of our life. Because when our lives are empty, we have nothing to give, and hurt people hurt other people. Fulfillment is your responsibility. The question is how. Okay? So we're just going to do a little bit of teaching. So to see with eyes of fulfillment, number 1, language is our battlefield. Okay? Words become flesh. We need to identify and clarify. We can't just be like, oh, this part of me that feels like, no, part of the battle is that we have no language for the struggle. So we have to actually use language. Number 2, we have to measure it. 0 to 10, how does your health feel? And number 3, we have to understand that we are integrated human beings. Okay, I'm gonna just briefly go around. Self-image is the opinion they hold of yourself. The opinion that they hold of yourself, you've either inherited from the people around you or you've developed through the years. It's who you think you are. I am just lazy. I am really hard worker. I am disciplined. It's a choice. And if somebody told you it's not, you can shift that right now, because it's a choice to be able to decide who you want to be, and you can neurologically rewire it. Number 2, your health. Health has to be integrated. You can't just train your mindset and not fix your physical health. It's mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual, because what you think about changes your emotion changes your physiology, and it changes your spiritual receptivity. I used to train women in prayer. The problem was they didn't know how to manage their mind and their emotion, and they couldn't receive prayer. Okay? Number 3, friendship. We often devalue friendship in our relationship when we don't understand that friendship is accompaniment in the journey of life to hold us accountable to who we were created to be. Your friendship is going to impact your wealth, your family, your self-image. Do you know that loneliness is an international epidemic? Yes, it's crazy, Katrina, but it's true. Why? Because loneliness is a communication issue. How do we know how to be a friend? Do you have a standard of friendship? Do we know how to say no to friendship? What kind of friendship actually fulfills us? It has to be identified and clarified. Language matters. Okay? Number 3, intimacy, the most sacred part of you. It doesn't matter how successful you are in business. If you come home and you don't want to be home because of that part of you, it doesn't just happen. It cannot just happen by default. It needs to be designed and redesigned every certain season of your life. Because the intimacy that I have with Ryan with 5 is different than 8 kids. And if I let that go, I have actually let go of every part of my life, including my business. You have to design it intentionally. Contribution, the extension of your work, whether you're a stay-at-home mom or in business or both, in between, you have a call to contribute. And you're either intentional about it or you're actually in denial that God created you for a reason and a purpose in every season. Not this huge thing at the end of my life, now. That's unique to this moment in time that you will never have again, okay? environment. The external environment that you have, your home life, if it's chaotic, it's only a matter of time until it's coming into your interior life, and vice versa. We have to pay attention to our work life environment, our home life environment. It cannot just be something that we just kind of ignore. External chaos encroaches on our internal chaos and vice versa. We need to pay attention to our environment. It matters, okay? Your wealth, which is defined as an abundance of your time, treasure, and talent for the sole purpose of contribution. And the contribution is important. We don't make money just for ourselves. Why? Because at the end of the day, we cannot take it home with us. Fulfilled people give money away. And they don't just give money away, they give their time and their treasure, just like Ken was talking about. And family. That part of us that continues to help us grow to become who we're created to be. Are we designing a home in our family life that's intentional in raising growth, mindset, and disciplined human being? We live in a world where there's not even common discipline. I have to train and retrain my children to say, hello. This is how you say hello. This is how you say goodbye. I mean, the most basic skill set is no longer common. Common sense, not common practice. If you're not training your children with even being polite and disciplined, I mean, it was Dr. Jordan Peterson, he said, you train your kids to be likable. Not for their ego, but because it enforces other people to want to be around them, and it builds their self-esteem. But you cannot give what you do not have. If you don't like yourself, you can't teach your children to like themselves. Okay, this is your work. We have to learn to see with eyes of oneness, because the reality is that every part of you impacts the other. And you know, we can't just say my mental health doesn't impact my marriage or my work life. You know it does. And you can deny it, but you cannot deny how you feel. Just like Grant Cardone. Learn to see with eyes of wholeness. It is your responsibility to design a fulfilling life, because an unfulfilled human being becomes toxic to our communities. And that is your choice. Okay? So what we want to start with is to identify and clarify what we want and don't want in every part of our arena. That's what we call, okay? You want to know, what do I want? And you know what? It changes in every season. What you want now, okay, could be this type of woman or this type of guy. As you grow and you learn, it changes. You know, I remember I was training a woman and she was having a really hard time in her relationship. And she said, I just want a guy who, you know, takes my trash out. I'm like, okay, we're gonna raise your standards a little bit, but, you know. Until we were training a little bit, she didn't know any better. What you want and don't want changes, and what you want and don't want changes with every season of your life. So this needs to be done year after year. Every new dream requires you to design every part of your life, because it doesn't matter if I achieve the hundreds and billions of dollars if part of my life has fallen. Doesn't matter if I've achieved the world if I've lost myself. Okay. Number 4, embrace discipline. I have 3 minutes, Ken, I'm gonna be really disciplined. Okay, I love the word discipline, because people say, January, how do you do it? How do you have 8 children and, you know, have a couple of businesses and do it with and have 17 years of great marriage, my favorite man. How do you do it? I said, there's no secret. You do the work, just what Anthony said. Discipline, make it our favorite word. Be a woman of discipline. How can I every day develop who I need to become, to build the business that I need to, and also be the mom and the wife that I need to, and the friend? What does that look like? Discipline. Right? Because what good is it? Great, we're all over the country and we're changing the world, and I come home and I don't like to be home. I have to be ordered in my discipline, in my mind, in my home life. And it's so important that we understand that information does not equal transformation. But it's a problem, because we assume, and neurologically, we've been subconsciously conditioned to think, right, that I'm just going to consume information. The more I know, the more I am. I know does not equal I am. Knowing isn't being. But unless we know that, we have to be very mindful, okay? And this is a formula I'm going to give you, the teacher and me. We have formulas in our school. Is information plus formation equals transformation. Formation is discipline, okay? Formation, which means you take the vision that you want, okay? And it's both mindset and skill set. Let me explain to you why. I'm going to say, I am going to be fit and strong. I'm going to imagine every day. I'm going to design that woman as fit and strong. And guess what? I don't have the skill set of creating a routine, saying no to social media. Maybe I don't know how to, manage my emotion. Mindset plus skill set. Skills give you choices. We are overwhelmed because we're under-skilled. Where do you go to learn skills? You can't know boundaries. You have to train to learn boundaries. It's conditioning. I don't become an Olympic gold athlete by just thinking my way through it. I have to get up, do the work, train. It's about a life of discipline. Behind a beautiful life is a man and woman hard at work and are disciplined. Have you ever met someone when you experience something so beautiful in their life and you're like, I'm just inspired? What does beauty mean? Beautiful, if you think about a beautiful sunset, a beautiful symphony, or beautiful architecture, you're in awe of it. Because something within you changes and when you encounter that beauty. What if you were that beautiful man and woman, where that every room you walk into, you inspire every person? Not because you're talking about you, but because you're adding value to them and you're making them feel important in your conversation. I remember Elena said, January, stop talking about yourself if you want to bring value to the world. How about we bringing value to the world? Right? It's about making the ordinary extraordinary. We can talk a lot about fluff and all the things that we need to do, but in that moment, in that present moment, how are you making that ordinary extraordinary? Your smile, the conversation, your questions. We need a world full of people who understand the value of the present moment. That in that moment is our moment to bring value to the world. And remember, nothing changes your value. You're unique and unrepeatable, and what you offer the world is irreplaceable. So own your value and make the ordinary extraordinary. Thank you.
Man, I don't know about you guys, but we just keep rolling them out one right after